Welcome in. Today we are taking a slightly different approach.
Yeah, a much more direct approach.
Right. We are speaking directly to you today. We're assuming you aren't just here for some casual background noise while you walk the dog or fold laundry.
Exactly. We are speaking to you as a sovereign architect, as a solo operator.
Someone who is in the trenches right now, trying to build a massive billion-dollar vision from the ground up entirely on your own shoulders.
And you know the weight of that ambition. You know the kind of mental chaos that comes with it.
So for this deep dive, we are cutting out the usual motivational fluff. We have stacked up two incredibly intense sources to build what is essentially a transformation blueprint.
Yeah, and the sources are heavy. First, we're looking at Viktor Frankl's seminal psychological masterpiece, Man's Search for Meaning.
Which details his survival in the Auschwitz concentration camp.
Right, and we are cross-examining his observations with a very brutal, high-performance structural audit manual called The Architect of Fortitude.
The mission today is to conduct a psychological audit. We want to extract the underlying frameworks of survival from these texts and figure out how to apply them directly to your daily operations.
Because building a business at that scale is hard, and it takes a massive, unrelenting toll on the mind. We're looking for the tools to manage that toll.
And I think we need to establish the tone right away. This isn't a pep talk.
No, not at all. The tone of this source material is lethal calm. It's intellectually dense and completely focused on the architecture of the mind.
The Architect of Fortitude actually refers to this kind of self-examination as a primary system reset.
Which I love. So we are going to dive into some really heavy concepts today, but the goal is to pull out highly practical forensic baselines for your own personal evolution.
Let's start with the first major theme we pulled from the sources, the sovereignty of the inner life, or basically mental autonomy.
Right. And to understand this, we really have to look at Frankl's arrival at the camp, because it establishes the absolute most extreme baseline of human suffering imaginable.
Yeah, he describes this horrifying processing system at the train station. An SS officer literally just pointing a finger to the right for forced labor and to the left for immediate death.
Just a flick of the wrist.
And Frankl survives that initial sorting, but then he is stripped of absolutely everything. His family is separated from him, his clothes are taken.
He even had a scientific manuscript hidden in his coat.
Right, his life's work up to that point.
Yeah.
And it's confiscated and mocked. He is reduced to what he calls his literal naked existence.
It's a profound psychological baseline. Frankl, as a psychiatrist, is essentially observing his own mind in a state of absolute zero.
Because everything external is gone.
Exactly. When you strip away a person's entire identity, all their worldly possessions and their physical autonomy, you expose the raw bedrock of human consciousness.
And what Frankl realized in that environment where the guards controlled every single calorie of food and every physical movement was that there was one specific thing they could not confiscate.
The last of human freedoms. The ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. To choose one's own way.
Okay, so let's translate that extreme baseline to the reality of a listener. Because obviously, the stakes of building a startup or running a solo operation do not equate to the horrors of a concentration camp.
No, of course not. But the psychological mechanism he is describing seems to be universal.
Right.
If we map this onto the daily operations of a founder, it entirely reframes how you process friction. Think about when external market conditions suddenly collapse.
Or a massive client pulls out at the last minute. Or your entire back-end system crashes.
The natural human instinct is to feel trapped. To feel like a victim of external circumstances. But the premise here is that your mental autonomy is always intact.
You do not control the chaos of the market, but you retain absolute sovereignty over your response to it.
Precisely.
But how do you actually do that in the moment? Because it's easy to say, choose your attitude when you're sitting around reading a book on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, it sounds like a bumper sticker until you have to use it.
Right. But when it's 3:01 a.m. and the server is down, and thousands of dollars are evaporating by the minute the adrenaline hits, the panic feels completely involuntary.
That is exactly where Frankl introduces a fascinating coping mechanism, one that emerged during his first few days of shock. He called it cold detached curiosity.
Cold detached curiosity.
Yes. He essentially detached his observing mind from his immediate physical reality. He wrote about standing completely naked in the freezing chill of late autumn, and instead of giving in to the terror of freezing to death, he forced himself to just feel curiosity.
He was objectively surprised that he didn't catch a cold.
Exactly. He turned his own trauma into clinical scientific data.
I get the theory, but isn't there a danger in detaching from your emotions like that? Doesn't a solo operator need passion and, emotional fire to survive the grind?
Passion is what builds the vision, but clinical detachment is what solves the immediate crisis. Think of it as a tactical shield.
So when that server crashes at 3 a.m. and the Slack notifications are blowing up,
The amateur reacts with emotional panic, which clouds judgment and leads to frantic, poor decision-making. The veteran operator, the sovereign architect, reacts with cold, detached curiosity.
you step completely outside the immediate sting of the disaster.
You analyze the wreckage like a forensic scientist. It's the difference between thinking, my company is ruined, versus thinking, fascinating, the system broke under this specific load. Let's find the exact point of failure.
That emotional detachment protects your mental resilience. You're separating your identity from the problem. The problem is just data on a screen.
Which maintains total mental autonomy.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, before we apply this to the broader business strategy, we need to clear something up. The sources constantly refer to logotherapy. For those of us without a background in psychiatry, what exactly is that?
Logotherapy is the school of psychotherapy that Frankl founded. The word logos is Greek, and it translates here to meaning. Right. Earlier psychological theories, like Freud's, argued that humans are primarily driven by the pursuit of pleasure. Adler's theory said we are driven by the pursuit of power. But Frankl argued that our primary drive is the pursuit of meaning.
So logotherapy is fundamentally about helping a person find meaning in their life, even through suffering,
Sometimes especially through suffering.
which totally flies in the face of modern productivity culture. Today, there is this massive obsession with finding balance and removing all stress from your life to reach this zen, tensionless state.
Yes, and Frankl explicitly runs against that. He argues that the desire for a tensionless state, which he calls homeostasis, is actually dangerous to mental health.
Homeostasis is dangerous.
He introduces a concept called new dynamics, which comes from the Greek word for mind. New dynamics is the healthy, necessary tension between what you have already achieved and what you still ought to accomplish.
It's the gap between who you are right now and who your vision demands you become.
Exactly. That completely flips the script on how we view stress. Frankl uses a brilliant architectural analogy. He says if you want to strengthen a decrepit arch, you don't remove weight from it, you actually increase the load laid upon it.
Because the added pressure forces the individual parts to join together more firmly.
The headwinds are the glue.
The pressure of the business is what forces you to become a better operator. This redefines the entire concept of meaning for me.
How so?
Well, we usually hear the word meaning and we think of it as this warm, fuzzy, poetic feeling. But in this context, meaning isn't a feeling at all. It operates more like the chief operating officer of your life.
The COO. I like that.
It is a strict directive force that manages the tension of the daily grind.
That is an excellent way to frame it. Meaning is the ultimate hedge against burnout. Frankl frequently points to a quote by Friedrich Nietzsche. He who has a why to live for can bear with almost anyhow.
He who has a why can bear almost anyhow.
If your why, your core, meaning that billion-dollar vision you are building is structurally sound, then the how just becomes manageable data.
The 100-hour work weeks, the isolation, the constant rejection from investors, those are the how.
Without a clear objective directing the system, that level of stress will destroy you. With it, the stress just becomes fuel for the engine.
You aren't pursuing happiness. Because as Frankl notes, happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue. It is a byproduct of having a reason to be happy.
If you are doing the grueling work to fulfill your specific mission, the satisfaction handles itself.
But that brings up a really tough reality. Building something great usually involves a lot of unavoidable failure. How does this philosophy handle the things that just flat out go wrong?
It requires what Frankl calls tragic optimism.
Tragic optimism. That sounds like an oxymoron.
It's a very specific mental framework. It is the ability to maintain your optimism and say yes to life in the face of what he calls the tragic triad of human existence: pain, guilt, and death.
It's a capacity to creatively turn life's negative aspects into something constructive.
And we see that exact same concept echoed in the Architect of Fortitude, but applied to high performance. The manual takes a pretty harsh stance on how operators deal with failure.
It challenges us to look closely at how often we blame external circumstances. A bad economy, a tricky competitor, a lack of funding as a camouflage for our own poor execution or burnout.
It demands that you deconstruct your so-called bad hand. How much mental energy is wasted wishing the parameters of the game were different?
Right.
The blueprint demands that you stop viewing these roadblocks as barriers or unfair punishments. Instead, you have to view them as the foundational material for your structural integrity. You don't just endure a bad hand, you utilize it.
There is a story in Frankl's text that perfectly illustrates this shift in perspective. An elderly general practitioner came to consult him. The doctor was severely depressed because he could not overcome the loss of his wife, who had died 2 years prior.
And Frankl didn't try to offer him medical therapy or comforting platitudes.
No, he just asked him one question. What would have happened, doctor, if you had died first and your wife would have had to survive you?
The doctor's reaction to that question is everything. He immediately realizes that if he had died first, his wife would have been the one suffering the terrible agony of mourning.
By surviving her, he spared her that pain.
His ongoing grief was essentially the price he was paying to save the woman he loved from suffering. Frankl notes that at that exact moment, the man's suffering ceased to be suffering because it finally found a meaning.
The meaning of a sacrifice.
Yes.
That is incredibly powerful. Suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds a meaning. So applying that to the solo operator listening right now, the sheer isolation of building this company alone, the technical failures that set you back 3 months, the constant financial anxiety.
If you look at it as a punishment, it will crush you.
But if you reframe it, it becomes a necessary sacrifice.
It transforms from misery into a human achievement. You are enduring this specific, highly concentrated pressure so that the vision can survive and manifest in the real world. Your suffering is the load bearing down on the arch, making the structure unbreakable.
Okay, so we have built up this heavy philosophical armor. We understand the theory. But let's get incredibly practical.
Let's do it.
At 5:30 in the morning, when the alarm goes off, the house is freezing, and you're completely exhausted, philosophy tends to go right out the window. How does a solo operator actually execute on this?
We extracted 3 specific daily protocols from the texts to maintain lethal focus during that critical first hour of the day, the 5:30 to 6:30 a.m. power hour.
Let's walk through them. Protocol 1 is what we were calling the second life simulation.
This is drawn directly from Frankl's categorical imperative for logotherapy. A categorical imperative is just a foundational, unconditional moral rule.
And Frankl's rule is this: live as if you were living already for the second time, and as if you had acted the first time as wrongly as you were about to act now.
That is a total brain bender. Live as if you have already messed up today once before.
How does that practically work when I sit down at my desk at 5:30 a.m.?
It works as a proactive diagnostic tool. Before you write a single email or line of code, you take 2 minutes to mentally simulate the day ahead. But you view it as a second chance.
You look at your schedule and you actively anticipate your own weaknesses.
You know yourself. You know that at 2 p.m., your energy will crash, and you will be tempted to make a tactical error. Maybe you'll skip a thorough code review, or you'll push a difficult client call to tomorrow.
Because in the first life simulation, I gave in to the fatigue and ruined the deal.
Exactly. By visualizing that failure as if it has already occurred, you create massive psychological leverage against yourself. You experience the sting of the mistake before you make it.
Which allows you to course correct in the present. You're retroactively fixing your day before it even begins. It puts you entirely on the offensive against your own worst habits.
It removes the element of surprise from your own laziness.
Okay, Protocol 2 is the 40% micro-focus strategy. This comes straight from the Architect of Fortitude. The manual introduces a concept called the governor.
It compares the human brain to a vehicle that has a built-in speed limiter. Our brains evolve for metabolic efficiency and survival, which means they are hardwired to constantly seek the path of least resistance to conserve calories.
So the governor is the mental software cap that prioritizes your comfort over your performance.
And what's crucial to understand is how early that governor actually kicks in to pump the brakes. The 40% rule states that when you feel completely exhausted, when your mind is screaming at you that you are entirely finished and the work is insurmountable, you have actually only tapped into about 40% of your physical and mental capacity.
The remaining 60% of your potential is locked safely behind a wall of manufactured mental fatigue.
It's an illusion designed to keep you safe.
So when I hit the wall at 6:15 a.m. and I've been staring at a complex scaling problem and my brain starts whispering, "You're done, you need a break, just check your phone for 5 minutes," that is a biological lie.
That is just the governor trying to conserve energy. You still have more than half your tank left.
But knowing it's a lie doesn't make the fatigue go away. How do you actually bypass the governor in that moment?
This is where the micro-focus strategy is deployed. The reason the governor feels so overwhelming is because you are looking at the macro picture. You are looking at the massive project, the years of work ahead, the mountain you still have to climb.
To break through that mental limit, you must drastically shrink your horizon of focus. You stop looking at the mountain entirely.
Just look at your feet.
Precisely. You focus exclusively on the next immediate centimeter of forward movement. You commit to writing just one more line of code, reading just one more paragraph of research, making just one more edit.
You relentlessly execute these micro movements when your brain is begging you to stop. That is the precise mechanism that rewires your neural pathways and builds the capacity to endure.
It's essentially hacking your own system by ignoring the finish line. Just relentless, tiny steps.
Right. And the final protocol, protocol 3, is tactical recall. We've also seen this referred to as accessing the cookie jar.
This is where both texts synthesize beautifully. The Architect of Fortitude talks about maintaining a mental inventory of your past victories and the traumas you've already survived.
And Frankl brings this incredible philosophical weight to that same idea. He states, having been is the surest kind of being.
Having been is the surest kind of being. It's a brilliant observation about the nature of the past.
Frankl argues that the potentialities you have actualized, the hard things you have already done, are irrevocably stored in the past. They are permanent. Nothing can ever erase them and take them away from you.
They are cold, hard facts.
So how do we use that as a tactical tool during a brutal work sprint?
You use it as empirical evidence against your own doubt. When you are nearing a system collapse, maybe you are at the end of a grueling 2-week sprint, everything is breaking, and your mind is telling you that this current crisis is the one that is finally going to destroy you, you consciously access this metadata database.
It is not about feeling nostalgic for the good old days. It is about pulling up vivid clinical data of past suffering you successfully navigated.
You pull up a memory of that brutal product launch from 3 years ago. The one where you had to work 48 hours straight, everything caught on fire, but you successfully shipped the update anyway.
You remember the exact emotional state of panic you felt then, and you remember the victory of overcoming it.
Yes. You take that stored data and you inject it into your current effort. You are literally proving to your own mind with undeniable historical evidence that it already possesses the structural integrity required to survive the current friction.
Your tactical recall proves the governor wrong.
These 3 protocols, simulating the day, shrinking the focus, and pulling data from the past, are massive tools. But as we wrap up this deep dive, we have to look at the other side of the coin.
Surviving the struggle is only half the battle.
What happens when you actually win? What happens when the business scales, the funding comes through, and that billion-dollar vision starts to become a reality?
The Architect of Fortitude has a very stark warning about exactly that phase. It calls it the disease of satisfaction. Human nature dictates that success breeds complacency. The moment the system feels comfortable, it begins to decay.
Which is why the final piece of the puzzle is the start at zero protocol. Yesterday's achievements are fantastic, and as Frankl said, they were safely stored in the past.
Dead data.
Exactly. They are dead data. They have absolutely zero bearing on today's execution. Every single morning, when that alarm goes off, the scoreboard is wiped clean. You wake up at 0.
It is a perpetual pursuit of improvement that ensures your edge is never dulled by your own ego. Ultimately, the responsibility rests entirely with you.
Meaning is not something you're going to accidentally stumble upon while walking down the street. It is a structure that you must actively, relentlessly build to house your own ambition.
No one else can define your why, and no one else is going to do the heavy lifting of the how for you.
We want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to mull over. It builds on the concept of the live autopsy mentioned in the Fortitude text.
Think about your single biggest failure from yesterday.
If you were to conduct a clinical, emotionless live autopsy on that specific failure, ignoring all external market conditions and looking exclusively at the architecture of your own mind, what structural flaw would you find?
And how exactly will you patch it before 5:30 tomorrow morning?